Hi everyone, this is Alice, I'm French, I'm from Paris, and today we are going to cover a big subject. It's how to buy vintage perfume bottle. I'm gonna give you all my best tips, my best advices so you can save time, energy, money. I'm also going to show you the recent vintage purchase I made online. I just recently bought the Hermes, nice collection of Hermes vintage bottle perfume. So I'm going to explain to you how I did, and we are going to review also this perfume at the same time. But before coming to that, I just want to introduce to you my channel. So my channel is all about French lifestyle. I'm also a huge perfume lover, especially vintage perfume. Vintage perfume are unique, they're rare, they're precious, they're very distinctive. You're not gonna smell like everybody else. There's a lot of stories, emotion behind vintage perfume. So if you are also passionate about vintage perfume, I strongly suggest you to watch my previous video on my channel. I review every vintage perfume. I do a lot of vintage perfume review. If you love this channel, don't forget to subscribe. It gives me a lot of motivation to continue, and you can also follow me on social media. So how to buy vintage perfume online, how to buy vintage perfume. I'm gonna give you all my tips and my advices. I love vintage perfume. I started to build my own collection 10 years ago. So over time, I learned what to do, what not to do, and I can give you my best advices. But I also want to explain why you might start to buy vintage perfume. You might start to buy vintage perfume if you, like me, a collectioner, if you love vintage smell. But also sometimes because you are looking for a very specific, very unique perfume. If you are looking for a perfume of your grandmother, of your mother, or 80s, 90s perfume, a perfume you were wearing where you were young, in your 20s or in your 30s, depends. Or you might also look for a very specific perfume, original smell, a perfume which has not been reformulated. It could happen. But also it might happen because the brand or the company just decided to stop the production. They decided completely to stop the production of the perfume. So you might buy vintage bottle because the perfume you are looking for is completely discontinued, which is the case, for example, for the Christian Lacroix bottle. I'm a very fan. I'm a big fan of the Christian Lacroix perfume. I love their perfume usually. They like haute couture perfume. They're really nice perfume. They smell very good, and the box is usually very beautiful. But unfortunately, Christian Lacroix, they completely discontinue the perfume. So they're very rare, very unique, and also expensive. So if I want to buy a Christian Lacroix perfume, I have to go to the vintage market. I won't be able to find Christian Lacroix in Sephora or even, in the regular perfume supplier. So I have to go to a very niche website and the vintage perfume. Important question you have is where to buy vintage perfume, because vintage perfume is growing, it's a new market, but it still might be difficult for you to find vintage perfume. And I can give you also where I supply myself and I buy my vintage bottle. So my first recommendation will be to go online. There are very few retailer or store which are very specialized into vintage perfume. You might find 2 of them in Paris, but most of the time I buy online, and it gives me also plenty time to do my research. So my first and my first choice usually is to go to Etsy. I love Etsy because most of the time I find a lot of different sellers, person, also company who are specialized into vintage smell. So I don't have any preference between, personal sellers or professional sellers. You might find very good personal sellers which also sell, very old vintage bottle because someone in the family just died, or they also are collector, very passionate. So you might find also very honest personal sellers. And I also sometimes also prefer professional sellers because they can find very specific bottle for you, if you are a good client or you have a very good communication, if you trust them, they can do a lot of research for you, especially if you are looking for a very expensive or very specific bottle. But I love Etsy because Etsy has plenty of choices, and they also started recently to be specialized into the vintage market. So I trust Etsy. My second website is eBay. I also love to check eBay. Same thing, I can go for personal sellers and professional sellers depending of of the bottle. If the bottle is very precious, very rare, which is the case for example for Caron perfume, they're very unique, very rare, especially bottle before the 50 and the 60. I go for a professional sellers. If the vintage bottle is very expensive and difficult to find, I will go for a professional sellers. But if I'm looking for a small size or nothing super expensive, I can go for personal sellers. But I love to check eBay because there are plenty choices. My also website, which I also like, is called fragrancenet.com. Fragrancenet.com, it's a website I discovered recently, but they also recently specialize into vintage smells, so you also might find vintage bottle, vintage or discontinue perfume. So I also like this website, and my recommendation will also to check the flea market and the auction. I love in Paris or wherever I am, even in Miami, I love to do the small flea market. Sometimes you can find very interesting vintage bottle, and you are able also to negotiate the price. Most of the time it's not expensive, it's cheap, you can talk to the people, it's super interesting. I also like to check auction like Drouot or even Christie's. Drouot in France, I might find very specific bottle from Hermes, from Caron for example, or Guerlain, and sometimes they are not super expensive. So I like to check auction and the flea market. It's super nice, you meet people, you connect, and you also can find also a lot of perfume lovers. So my first recommendation to buy vintage perfume is really to do your own research. It's super important to make a lot of research about the perfume you are looking for. So of course the name, but especially the date. The date is super important. You have to know when the perfume has been launched and created, but most importantly you have to know when the perfume has been reformulated, because the original smell might be completely different than the reformulation, and you might looking for an original smell, or you might looking for a specific reformulation. I can give you an example. For example, Magie Noire by Lancôme, which has been created in the 70, the formulation of the smell is completely different in the 70s when the perfume has been launched than when they started to reformulate the perfume during the 80s and the 90s, and they also reformulate the perfume in 2000. So the smell is completely different. And I know for sure that it's better to buy Magie Noire, the original smell, the original scent, than the smell from the 2000s. And the price also is completely different. If I want to look for an original bottle back to the 70s, the price is much more expensive because they are very rare, very precious, very unique. So also the price can depend on the date. So it's super important to do your research, to know when the perfume has been launched, has been created, when the perfume has been reformulated. And my advice, my recommendation will go to Fragrantica. It's the Bible of vintage perfume. If you are a vintage perfume lover like me, probably know Fragrantica. It's really our Bible. Fragrantica lists everything about the perfume. Usually they list, the dates of the creation, the date of the reformulation. Sometimes they might also indicate the different ingredients, and they also indicate the nose, the people who really create the perfume, the people behind the perfume. If you are not able to find that on Fragrantica, you can find all this information, go to the company, you know, the company website, the brand, you can call them, make your research. Don't hesitate to go to a specific store, you know, a retailer, or directly to the brand. You can collect information and they will be probably happy to help you. So do your research, it's super important before starting to buy the perfume, and know when the perfume has been launched and when the perfume has been reformulated. So the second recommendation will be to pay attention to the condition of the bottle and observe a lot of different details. So it's important to ask a lot of questions to the seller, but make sure that the bottle is authentic. It's not you know, unused bottle, a new bottle which has been, you know, recycled as a vintage bottle. There are some scams, you know, some people can produce this bottle in China, they use this bottle, especially unused packaging or unused vintage bottle, and they can sell it as vintage bottle. You want to make sure it's a very authentic bottle. So if the bottle is used, empty, semi-empty, there's no problem about it. But if the bottle is unused and there's still the box, it might be a little bit problematic. So don't hesitate to ask questions to the seller, okay? And don't hesitate to really check the authenticity of the bottle. Usually they're gonna say it's made in France. They might indicate the date in the packaging. So the seller can also give you some pictures, send you some pictures, some information about the packaging. So sometimes it's indicated into the packaging. If not, just ask a lot of questions to the seller. And my also tips will be to pay attention to the bottle and the color of the perfume. It's how you can determine that the perfume is really a vintage one. It's really the color of the perfume, because a vintage bottle, a vintage perfume is very different than a regular perfume. And in fact, the longer the perfume is, the older the perfume is, most of the time the darker, and the perfume is more intense, is more dark. So the older the perfume is, the darker the perfume is, just because of the alcohol and the decantation. You know, a perfume has time to decant, you know, in French we say that. So usually the alcohol, my recommendation will also to pay attention to the condition of the bottle, and especially how the bottle has been stored. It's super important and very few people know that, but a vintage bottle and the condition of the bottle really depends on how the bottle has been stored. You know, if the perfume has been stored in a very dry, clean place, you know, not out of the sun, the perfume is in a very good condition, and you're gonna find this, you know, very original smell, the notes are intact and everything is intact. If the perfume has been stored in a very humid place, you know, directly into the sun, the perfume might really be bad, and you're not gonna smell very much, you know, the original smell and all the notes. So really pay attention to that, especially if you want to wear this vintage perfume. It's something you have to ask to the seller. Don't hesitate to ask to the seller, especially if the vintage bottle is expensive. Don't hesitate to ask her or ask him how the perfume has been stored. It might also influence the price of the bottle, okay? And you might have room to negotiate the price just because of the condition of the perfume. My recommendation will be also to pay attention to the packaging, so also it might also influence the price of the vintage bottle. If the box is intact, if the box is still here, if it's a box or not. Sometimes, you know, they can sell the perfume completely empty with no box, you know, and in that case you have also room to also negotiate the price. For example, recently I was looking for a Christian Lacroix perfume, but I was really looking also for the packaging, for the box, you know, unused and intact, because Christian Lacroix perfume, they have a very nice vintage box. Usually they use silk, and the box are super luxury. I really love the packaging. And for example, from, you know, for the Hermes vintage collection I just bought, the packaging also is very nice. I love the Hermes packaging. It's very distinctive. It's, you know, part of the brand. So I wanted also to buy the packaging, so I pay really attention to the packaging. and it gives you also a room to negotiate the price. I know, for example, that if a Christian Lacroix perfume is also used and there's no box, the price might go down just because of that, and the price can go up just because the Christian Lacroix box is intact and in perfect condition. Recommendation is also really don't hesitate to ask questions to the seller and negotiate the price. There's always room to negotiate. Don't hesitate to check the authenticity of the bottle, and if you have any doubt, don't go for it, especially if the price seems to you too expensive. Unfortunately, there's no Argus or price Argus for vintage bottle right now, but you might have an idea. For example, if someone is selling a bottle from the 70 or 60 and it sounds to you super cheap, because this bottle might be, you know, sometimes they're very rare, it might be too good or too good to be true, okay? So be careful. Same thing if someone is selling a bottle from the 80s and 90s and the perfume is not super rare and is selling this bottle for like 1,000, okay, it's a scam. So just by doing your research and also try to negotiate the price, it's my last recommendation. When you gather enough information, you check the authenticity, you have room also to negotiate the price. Don't hesitate to negotiate the price with the seller directly. If there's also auction on eBay, you can bid, make a bid. Yeah, don't be shy, and there's always room to negotiate the price. So now I'm gonna give you an example. You know, I recently bought on eBay this very nice collection of free vintage perfume from Hermes with the box. I love Hermes perfume. So Hermes perfume for me are like Caron. They're really la crème de la crème, the top of perfume. They smell super good. They never smell cheap. It's like Chanel perfume, okay? They're super fancy, and they are very good, okay? Very elegant. And I started to collect vintage perfume for Hermes, especially back before 2000, between the 80s, 90s. Because I just found out that usually the smell is a little bit different, and I don't like all the reformulation from Hermes. Sometimes they reformulate the perfume and I don't like it very much. And I'm a big fan of the 90s perfume. I'm a big fan of also perfume which been reformulated in the 90s, because I really find this very distinctive powdery smell from the 90s, which I love. Usually in 90s you find a very sexy aldehyde, a little bit of patchouli. It's a very much oriental reformulation, very specific of the 90s, and I love perfume from the 90s. So I was looking for an Hermes collection. So how I buy this perfume, and we're gonna smell and review this perfume together at the same time. So we're gonna discover them. So as you can see, first I really wanted to buy you know, a very conditioned box. So the box is in a very good condition, as you can see. I love the box from Hermes, okay? I love box from Hermes. I think it's part also of the brand. They are very unique design. So the box is almost intact. The perfume is in a very good condition, as you can see. Very good condition, nothing is broken. They're unused, so it also influence the price, in fact, because they are unused. And I can tell it's vintage because the color of the bottle are a little bit darker, especially for this one from Calèche. So this perfume they are just from before 2000, in fact. And I can tell even the color of this one, but especially from Calèche, it's a very distinctive amber, yellow amber, very distinctive and vintage perfume. As I said before, really pay attention to the color of the perfume. It's super important. The older the perfume is, the darker, intense it should be in terms of color. It should be like amber, actually, a little bit amber. You know, so it really also influences the price. So I'm pretty happy with this vintage bottle, and I'm started to looking for I'm gonna talk more about the perfume, but I'm started also to look for vintage bottle from Hermes, from this perfume Calèche. So this is the first perfume of the collection. It's called Calèche, okay? It means carriage in English, and it's a very, it's really the signature of Hermes. This perfume is really a signature perfume of Hermes. It has been launched in 1961, and at the same time they also started to launch the Birkin bag. Okay, so they started to launch all the signature, emblematic, iconic products. The Birkin bag, which is also a masterpiece of Hermes, and they also launched this perfume. And usually they really recommend in Hermes to spray this perfume in your bag. This one has been launched in 1961, and it's really the emblem, the signature smell of Hermes. Why? Because at the same time they started to launch the Birkin bag, which became the iconic bag, you know, iconic masterpiece of Hermes. And they also launched their first, I'm gonna say, modern perfume. It's called Calèche. And Calèche means carriage in French, so it's really the emblem of Hermes. And this perfume is really the signature smell of Hermes. And usually they suggest you, when you buy a bag or a scarf, they're gonna suggest you to spray this perfume. It's a perfume made to be sprayed on a bag or on a silk scarf. It's really the perfume made to spray on a silk and a bag, on all the accessories you can buy from Hermes. And I started to be very interested into vintage bottle from Calèche because they start, you know, back then in the 70s, 80s, they started to sell Calèche in a very nice box with silk. Sometimes it came really with like almost a silk coussin, a silk coffin, silk paper, also not white but really silky with some pattern on that, and the box was also in velvet, and even the bottle was super fancy, super fancy, with this little tie like that. Sometimes it was also in silk. So you might find super fancy bottle from Calèche in Hermes, but they are vintage. And the price is a little bit expensive. You might find this bottle around 100, 200 euros, but they're super fancy. So I started to look on eBay. That's why I came to this perfume. And so we're gonna smell this perfume together, and well, I'm gonna give you also tips how to spray vintage perfume, vintage bottle, and what's the big difference between a vintage perfume and a modern one. And we're gonna, you know, start to smell this one together, which is going to be super interesting. So first of all, a vintage bottle is not like a modern perfume. Why is that? Because a vintage perfume is going to develop completely differently than a regular bottle. It's like wine, okay? A vintage wine is going to develop completely differently than a modern wine. Why is that? Because the alcohol is dated, the alcohol has time to decant in the bottle, to distill in the bottle, and the older the bottle is, and the more present the alcohol will be. So how you spray and how you use vintage perfume. So usually I recommend to rub it. Why is that? Because you're gonna smell first the alcohol. Okay, you're not going to smell the notes of the perfume, and when you rub a little bit, you're going to develop the notes in a faster way. It's going to be more quicker to develop the notes, and you just want to find a way to remove this alcohol smell, which is completely normal, completely normal. I don't recommend to do that with a modern regular bottle. Please never do that with a normal perfume or modern perfume. When you buy a modern perfume, you just spray and you just give time to the note to develop, but you spray. Never rub a modern perfume because you're gonna mix and match the notes, you're gonna completely mess up the notes and everything. What you smell with a modern perfume, it's really in the very few seconds you smell the top notes of the perfume. After a few minutes you smell the middle notes of the perfume, and what's left, you smell the base of the perfume, really the base, and what's the identity of the perfume. But with a vintage smell is completely different, and you're gonna smell more with a vintage perfume, more the base, which is completely normal because, you know, the perfume has time to age, is old, so the top and the middle notes, you know, just fade away, and you're gonna really smell the base of the perfume directly, which is not the case with a modern perfume. So when you rub a vintage smell, you go directly to the base and you just fade away, remove this alcohol smell. With a modern perfume is different, okay? The alcohol is not that present, and you just want to spray and really give time to the perfume to develop, top, middle and base. With a vintage perfume, you go directly to the base, to the DNA of the perfume. So I just rub the perfume. I love this one. It's a very vintage, classy smell of Hermes. Actually, it's very elegant. This one is very, very elegant. If I buy a modern version of Calèche, I'm supposed to smell a very white floral aldehyde, okay, very white floral perfume with some wood notes on the base. So if I buy a modern version, I'm supposed to smell on the top notes the aldehyde, the neroli, the bergamot, the lemon, so very fresh notes. In the middle note, I'm supposed to smell, you know, the very white flowers notes, so iris, jasmine, ylang ylang, lily of the valley. And on the base, I'm supposed to smell the musk, the cedar, the vetiver, the cypress, and the oak moss. But the vintage version is super interesting. Right now, I'm only smelling the base of the perfume. I don't smell the white flowers, I don't smell the fresh notes. So the citrus, the bergamot, the orange, the neroli, they completely disappear. They completely melt up or completely, you know, fade with the base. And right now, I don't smell a white flower perfume. Or if I smell it, it's a very, very green white flower. I smell very much the base of the perfume. I smell very much the oak moss, I smell very much the musk, the cedar and the vetiver, and probably the white flower, but the notes have completely changed with time. They completely change. They completely melt up with the oak moss. It's very weird. It's a very distinctive smell, very aged vintage smell. I love it. I love this smell actually. So it's a very good perfume, probably on my scarf, on my silk scarf. Usually I wear vintage scarf, especially from Hermes. I like, you know, I like a very edgy, very street, very, you know, very modern look. And I like to combine some vintage piece. And on my vintage piece, usually I like to spray very much vintage perfume. So this one, it will be a good combination with a very vintage scarf, vintage bag. Yeah, it's a super interesting perfume. And the vintage smell is super nice. It's a very, very nice smell. Yeah, I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased. One from the collection is Amazon Eau de Parfum. So look at this cute little bottle. It's very, very beautiful. So Amazon has been launched in 1974, so it's much more a 70 perfume. And I'm gonna say this perfume is really a floral perfume. It's different. We're still in the green woody notes, okay? But yeah, it's a very vintage smell. I can tell that it's very authentic just by the smell actually. Yeah, and it's very distinctive of the 70s. So this one is less green and woody. It's supposed to be a very much floral aldehyde with green and woody notes on the back. But it's weird. I smell very much. What I smell is, let me put on my hand and rub it up. Ah, it's super interesting. It's a very vintage smell, but I don't smell the aldehyde. I'm supposed to smell the aldehyde, but because it's a vintage one, I am super interesting what I smell actually. I smell more the green, still also the base of the perfume, which is more green notes. I don't, oh, super interesting. Ah, yeah, it's very much green and woody. Very much green and woody notes. But we are more into the wood. I smell the wood. Right now it's much more woody. So if I buy a modern bottle of Amazon, I'm supposed to smell the aldehyde on the top, neroli, violet on the top, narcisse, rose, iris, hyacinth. But I don't smell the flowers at all. I don't smell either the flowers and not the aldehyde. I smell the woody note, and the woody note are the base of this perfume. So I smell the cedar, the oak moss, and the vetiver. But the cedar is much more present. You see the difference between a vintage bottle, okay, and really the modern one. If I buy the modern version of Amazon, I'm gonna smell pretty much all these, you know, floral aldehyde notes. Right now, I'm really into the wood. It's really Amazon, like the name of this perfume, okay? The base is much more present in the vintage version. I really like this one. I really like the vintage version. I like to smell the base of the perfume. That's why I love vintage perfume. And vintage bottle actually. Yeah, I really smell the wood. So this one is super interesting actually. I might spray this one on my leather jacket, for example. I think it's a perfect perfume on a leather, a fake leather or true leather, whatever leather jacket. It's a super interesting perfume, much more like, it's perfect for that. It's not smell leather. There's some kind of dark leather notes in the back, but we are much more in the wood. Yeah, it's a very woody, intense perfume right now. So I really like this one. Very good perfume. Last one of the collection is called Parfum d'Hermès. Parfum d'Hermès, it's a very interesting perfume actually. Very, very interesting perfume. So Parfum d'Hermès has been launched in 1984, so it's very much an 80s perfume, and you know how much I love 80s. Not only in perfume, in general, in fashion. I'm a huge collector of 80, you know, 80 bag, 80s stuff, 80 also fashion designer. So let's rub Terre d'Hermès. So if I buy a modern version of Terre d'Hermès, I'm gonna supposed to smell, you know, the top note aldehyde, hyacinth, bergamot. Middle note are very white, no, very flowery notes. So the Bulgarian rose, the ylang ylang, the iris, the jasmine. And on the base, I'm supposed to smell a very oriental perfume. I think it's a very, originally, it was like a very much Chypre aldehyde oriental perfume. I'm supposed to smell on the base of the myrrh, the incense. So incense is very intense. Incense was used in the 80s, in the 90s. It was used in a very strong perfume. It reminds me of Magie Noire too. Magie Noire has a lot of incense actually. Sandalwood, spices, amber, cedar, vanilla, vetiver. So yeah, it's a combination of very oriental green notes. Very interesting perfume. So right now I'm smelling the vintage version, okay? So it's completely different than the... Let me spray here where I don't have any perfume. So the vintage version is completely different than the regular one. I love this perfume. I love this perfume. It reminds me a little bit of Jean-Louis Scherer actually, which is my favorite winter perfume. Yeah, it's a very cheap perfume. This one is a very cheap. I'm not gonna say it's an oriental. It's a very cheap. It reminds me a little bit of Magie Noire, Jean-Louis Scherer, this type of cheap, very intense cheap, you know. It's not that, it's green, but it's not, you know, it's not woody green, very, you know, very heavy green and strong green. It's a very, very nice chypre. This one is very nice. It's very, very well constructed, very well built. And I smell, to be honest with you, I think I still smell some of the middle notes actually, but yeah, the base is super present. I really smell the myrrh, the incense and the green notes actually. I think I still smell the ylang ylang. So I smell the ylang ylang. So probably some of the middle notes are still here, but the base is a blend of like ylang ylang and, you know, really like the myrrh, the incense, the vanilla is present. And the vetiver. It's a very good, very good chypre. I love Terre d'Hermes. Of the three, probably my favorite is this one. Of the three is Terre d'Hermes, but I also really love Calèche. This one might a very good, you know, day perfume. To be honest, it's a very good day perfume. Very well blended, very well constructed. I love this chypre. This chypre is very nice. Story, this one is discontinued, so apparently Hermes does not produce this one anymore. I check on Fragrantica, so you can only find, you know, some bottle from the 80s actually. So I'm really glad I bought this nice you know, collection. And they said that it looks like Chamal of Guerlain, but it reminds me a little bit of this perfume of, you know, Magie Noire or Jean-Louis Scherer, you know, this very intense and dark chypre. But they are more like green notes. We are more in the green side than really the floral. Yeah, it's a discontinued perfume from Hermes, unfortunately. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this video is gonna help you if you are looking for vintage perfume online. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also, you can leave a comment below. I will be super interested to know how you buy a vintage perfume, how you do, which site, which website do you use. Also, if you know this perfume from Hermes, especially this one, Terre d'Hermes, which is also discontinued, if you know someone who used to wear this one, or if you used to wear this one, just tell me what do you think about this perfume, how you get Terre d'Hermes, because this one is discontinued and Hermes does not make this one anymore. So yeah, don't forget to comment. I love your comment and I try to respond to every comment you leave. I wish you a very good day and see you soon for another video. Bye.